right. Tell me what we talked about last week. What happened to Polly Boy? We'll start here. He's in Corinth, and he's at the tail end of his third ministry journey, his third missionary journey. And he says, it's time for me to go to Jerusalem. I'd like to get there by the time of Pentecost. Let me hop on a ship. Uh-oh. Why does he not hop on the ship? This okay. It's okay. Once I get the ball rolling, it'll be easier to remember. That's usually how it goes, right? So the Jews have a plot to kill him. And so if you remember the map I had last week, he goes back the way he came. He does the return route to kind of avoid the Jews from hurting him. Then he goes by Ephesus, and he doesn't go into Ephesus, he calls the pastors, and he gives them a pep talk. And what is the warning? What does he tell the pastors to do? What should they watch out for? False teachers, wolves, not just outside the church, but also inside the church. See, you get started, you get the momentum. It's easy to remember that, right? Okay, then he finally gets on a boat and he goes to Israel. He gets off there and he says, I need to go to Jerusalem. How do his companions feel about that? Don't do it. Why? Yeah, Jesus died when he did that. And so don't go. But Paul says, even if I do die, I'm living my life for God. And so he goes, he gets there, and he meets with James, who is the kind of the leader of the church in Jerusalem. This is James, Jesus' brother. And James goes up to Paul and says, hey, bud, there's some rumors going around that you're saying it is illegal for the Jews to practice their customs. Is that what Paul is actually saying? What is he actually saying? Not that you can't do them, but rather they are not necessary for you to do them. Are you saved by practicing these Jewish customs? If you're circumcised or not, you can still be saved. And so James said, hey, why don't you sponsor these guys in their Nazirite vows and just partake in the Jewish customs so they know that's not actually the case. That's what Paul does. He participates in this custom with them to say, hey, no, I'm not against these customs, I'm fine. And so part of that custom is spending time in the temple in the purification process. And he's there. Who else goes to the temple?
Peter?
Well, Peter, yeah, sure. But who else goes to the temple, in the Jewish temple? Pharisees do. Just think about this for a second. Think of in Mecca, in Islam. Who goes to Mecca? Every Muslim that is born takes a pilgrimage to Mecca. So, who goes to the Jewish temple? All the Jews from around the world. Is Paul kind of known around the Roman world? Yes, he is. So he's a celebrity. And what happens when he's walking through the temple courts? He's recognized by a Jew from Asia. And was he popular in that area by the Jews? No. And so the Jews in Asia, they get all crazy. They start making uproar. Hey, this guy look at the things he's teaching. And also, he brought a Gentile in the temple. That's a big, big no-no. We're all impure now because of this guy. And so they gang up and they start beating him up. And then the police come, which in that case are the Roman, the soldiers. They're the police. And the tribune comes and says, we got to stop this. And so he grabs Paul and literally has to carry him out because they're going to beat him up so much. And the tribune asks, well, what did you do? Paul said, I didn't do anything. And so the tribune says, well, I need to find out more of what's going on. So that's where we stopped there. It was still kind of nebulous what's even going on. The tribune does not know. And by the way, what's a tribune? It's one of the highest ranking Roman soldiers, like a centurion who oversees the military there, right? So Paul is interacting with some big wigs in the Roman Empire, some important people. Any questions or comments on that recap?
Did we echo the part where he revealed that he was actually a Roman citizen?
Yeah, okay, yeah, yes. Thank you, Shane. I missed the detail, right? Paul does say he's a Roman citizen. We talked about this. Why is it important for him to mention that he's a Roman citizen?
They do trials.
Okay, they do trials. They have a lot of rights.
Yeah.
How do you become a Roman citizen?
Through, it can be passed down through your parents if they either buy it or what was the other reason?
You're born into it. You buy it. You do something really nice for Rome. You military service. You kind of earn it that way by just showing how great a Roman citizen you would be. And then once you've got it, it's passed down to your kids over and over throughout the generations, right? So the tribune said, I bought this. Well, Paul said, well, I was born with it. Okay? And that's going to come into play a bunch in these next chapters. So let's actually start chapter 22, verse 30, where it says Paul before the council right there. But on the next day, desiring to know the real reason why he was being accused by the Jews, he unbound him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to meet, and he brought Paul down and set him before them. And looking intently at the council, Paul said, Brothers, I have lived my life before God in all good conscience up to this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law you order me to be struck? Those who stood by said, Would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest, for it is written, You shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. What is happening here? Where is Paul now? He's still in Jerusalem. Who is he before? The council, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, Ananias, the high chief priest at the time. And he's kind of on trial. And what does Ananias command the people to do? Beat him. And so Paul, he comes back with a little verbal beating of the high priest. What does he say?
That is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall.
What is a whitewashed wall?
Phony.
A
A phony.
phony? What does that mean?
Clean on the outside, dirty on the inside.
Okay. And Al, I think you're onto something here, because Jesus actually uses a term like this too. Go back real quick to Matthew chapter 23. The good old Matthew days. Sounds like, 2 years ago now? You're in Matthew? Matthew 23, verse 27. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within them are full of dead people's bones and uncleanness. Yes. Yes, he calls out the Pharisees for their hypocrisy, right? And so what Paul's called the whitewashed walls is probably a similar expression. And Alan, I think you're dead on, right? They look good on the outside. Look at those robes. Look at how important Ananias is. But inside is a cold, dark heart that has rejected the God they say they worship. Now, what is the complaint the Pharisees and council bring against Paul for saying that? Yes, it's against God's law to talk against the ruler of the people. And so Paul doesn't necessarily apologize. He doesn't recant his statement, but he does recognize Ananias' authority, because that comes from, I believe it's from Exodus. Exodus 22, verse 28, where Paul, we're not going to read it, but that to not revile a ruler of the people is one of God's law. And so Paul is saying, I'm not an antinomian, I'm not against God's law, but I will stand by what I said. You are truly evil. By the way, Paul also says that you are ruling according to the law by starting by doing something contrary to the law. What thing contrary to the law is Ananias doing?
Telling people to beat him up.
Why is that wrong?
No trial.
No trial. He's not been accused of anything yet. You know, I'm not going to pick on Shane, so I was going to pick on you. I'm going to pick on Shane. If I punch Shane in the face for no reason, right? Obviously, it's not righteous. It's not fair. And Paul is saying this to you too, right? You beat me up without even accusing me or not even convicting me of anything. Sounds kind of familiar. Who else was convicted and beaten and crucified without a fair trial? Jesus was. All right, verse 6. Now when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with respect to the hope and the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial." And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Then a great clamor arose, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party stood up and contended sharply, "We find nothing wrong in this man. What if a spirit or an angel spoke to him?" And when the dissension became violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him away from among them by force and bring him into the barracks. The following night the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome."
What's the difference between Sadducees and...
I was about to ask that very question. You're reading my mind. What is the difference between the Sadducees and the Pharisees?
Well, they don't believe in afterlife.
Okay.
What are said?
So we'll go with ground level here, right? No, so this is good questions, right? Pharisees and Sadducees are both students of the law. When I say the law, I mean the law of Moses and also the oral law, the spoken law. They're teachers of the people. Now, Pharisees are more of lay teachers. They're more on everyday life. Think of like how I'm a pastor. I speak to you, I'm with you, we worship together, right? I'm on your level. That's kind of what the Pharisees, kind of like lay teacher of the law, right? And Pharisees would believe what? Resurrection of the dead. They believed the whole Old Testament that you have in that book. They believed it all. And the clearest passages about the resurrection of the dead come from the book of Daniel, the prophet. And so they believed that. They believed in resurrection, in visions, and angels, because these are stuff that happens in the Old Testament. The Sadducees are more of like the theological aristocracy. They're the higher ups, okay? By the way, Pharisees didn't like Rome at all because the Romans are the pagans. They're all these nasty people who bring all these false gods. The Sadducees were actually okay with Rome, at least a little bit, because they brought stability, and so they could keep their positions of power over the people and over the temple.
And the Sadducees were also Jews.
Correct.
Were they like just a higher form of Pharisees?
They are.
Were they once Pharisees that then became Sadducees?
I don't believe you could not go from Pharisee to Sadducee, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're born into this aristocracy, this hierarchy. Yeah. But a big difference about the Sadducees, they don't believe the whole Old Testament. They believe the first 5 books.
Which is
the Pentateuch. Yeah, first 5 books of Moses, what Moses wrote. That's the true word of God, nothing else. And so they would reject the resurrection of the dead. They would reject angels and visions. In fact, the Pharisees were more about living life knowing that there's something afterwards. The Sadducees were all about there's nothing afterwards, so how can you be a good Jew? How can you live a good life now? Because that's it. And God will reward you if you do good stuff now. But the Pharisees actually looked for the resurrection of the dead. Does that make sense? The thing about Pharisees and Sadducees is we don't have too much about them outside of the Bible. The Bible is the clearest picture of who they are because after the temple falls in 70 AD, when the Jewish temple is destroyed by the Romans, we don't really hear about the Sadducees anymore, right? So, but think of them as like the temple aristocrats. Like they're kind of like the ruling power in the temple, okay?
That they were just born into.
I believe it was more of a born into kind of role, yes. I have to double check that though.
Money too.
Yes, so
What?
they were much wealthier. Thank you, that's a good detail. The Sadducees were way more wealthy than the Pharisees, which all makes sense, right? Because, well, it's all about this life, and so if we have the money, we're rewarded by God, so we're special. Go ahead.
And so Moses wrote Pentateuch.
Yes.
The first 5, and then the rest of the Old Testament.
Various authors.
Various.
So a lot of different prophets. We have the history books of Samuel and about King David and all the kings, right? That's history of different authors, right? But lots of different prophets. But again, the Sadducees were just the 5 books of the Bible. So, was there division between the Sadducees and the Pharisees? Yes, there was. Does Paul know this?
Yes.
Yes, he does. So what's kind of the grenade he opens and throws into the room?
He split them
How?
by taking one side.
What did he say was the issue that he was on trial for? It is because of the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial. And all of a sudden, the Pharisees are like, maybe an angel spoke to him. And how do you think the Sadducees were like that when they said, an angel spoke to him? Well, we don't even believe in angels. What are you talking about, right? And so now they're fighting. There's an uproar between them. So bad that Luke describes it. The tribune was afraid that they were going to tear Paul apart. Have you noticed the pattern, Jillian, in Acts? Does Paul make a lot of friends all the time? Seems like everywhere he goes, everything blows up, right? But Jesus promises what happened. The gospel divides. The gospel sometimes does not bring peace at first. Of course, when we receive Jesus, then we have that peace that surpasses all understanding. But the gospel is divisive. So the trial ends up going nowhere, and Paul is taken to the Roman barracks. One thing that happens in the end of this section, what happens at the very end of what we just read? Who appears to Paul? Jesus. We kind of gloss over this. This is the second time in the book of Acts that Jesus actually appears to Paul. What's the first time? On the road to Damascus in all glory and power and might. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? But now he appears to Paul again while he's imprisoned. And what comfort does he give Paul?
Encourage.
For what?
As he has testified about him in Jerusalem, he must also testify for all.
Okay. Jesus tells Paul, your story is not ending here. I have more for you to do. And that's a comfort, but also a hope for him. Because where did he want to end up eventually anyway? Rome. So the rest of Acts is basically how he gets there. And if you like history, you're going to like these next couple chapters. And if you don't, if you like the Bible, then you'll like these next couple chapters. So, all right. Yes. Okay, verse 12. We're going to read a little bit of a section together. Okay. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. Can you imagine, Jillian, having 40 people who want to kill you and tell you, we're not going to eat and drink until this man is dead? How much evil and wickedness could these people have in their hearts, right? These are wicked people. Verse 15. Now therefore, you along with the council give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly, and we are ready to kill him before he comes near. Now the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush, so he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, "Paul the prisoner called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you." The tribune took him by the hand, and going aside asked him privately, "What is it that you have to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by them, for more than 40 of their young men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for your consent." So the tribune dismissed the young man, charging him, "Tell no one that you have informed me of these things." Then he called 2 of the centurions and said, "Get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen, and go as far as Caesarea to the 3rd hour of the night, or at the 3rd hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix the governor." And he wrote a letter to this effect: "Claudius Lysias, to his excellency the governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. And desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have had against him." So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. When they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from. And when he learned he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive." And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. Okay. What happens? Paul is in the barracks. And the 40 Jewish men say, "We won't eat or drink until Paul is dead." Who finds out?
Son of Paul's sister.
So his nephew, right? Paul's nephew finds out. Yeah, I know. Paul's nephew runs to the barracks and tells Paul, and Paul says, "Centurion, can I talk to you for a second?" And then my nephew's got something to tell the tribune. And the tribune, who actually seems like a pretty cool guy here, right? He actually is willing to listen, finds out about this plot and tells the nephew, "Tell no one you told me this." So what's the solution the tribune comes up with to keep Paul safe?
He's gonna, I guess, have him escorted.
How many escorts? 200! Whoa! He gets a little militia to take him all the way to Caesarea. Whoa, okay. Maybe overkill. We'll talk about that in a second. And then he gets to Caesarea, and then there he is protected and kept safe so that he could have a fair trial. By the way, as Shane said, why does he have the right to a fair trial? Because he's a Roman citizen. Why does Paul get a military escort to Caesarea? 200 people? It is overkill. Why?
Have something to do with the tribune, like wanting to, like the looks of it, like looking powerful, looking.
All right, this is good. Have any of you seen the movie Captain Phillips?
Yeah.
Okay, you've heard this. You've seen the movie Captain Phillips. It's based on a real story. It's a little bit of a violent movie for the younger folks. Maybe wait a little bit, but I do recommend this movie. It's a great movie. But a real story about a sailor named Richard Phillips. Back in 2009, he ran a U.S. cargo ship on the Somali coast. And Somali pirates came and hijacked the ship. And it was pretty bad, right? And they took Captain Phillips hostage. And the story goes, what happens? The U.S. Navy, with all their big ships and their helicopters and everyone, they come to save the hostage, Captain Phillips. How much money was spent with all these? They had Navy SEALs there, sniper units. How much money was spent for one American citizen? And yet, why did they spend all that money? Send a message, but also, he's an American. We protect our own. Why would the tribune give 200 men to make sure Paul was safe? He's a Roman citizen. That's his right. The Romans stick together. Wow, okay. And I think it's kind of funny. You see, God is actually defending Paul through the powers of Rome here. He's making sure Paul is safe. So when Jesus promised Paul, you're going to go to Rome and preach the gospel too. He's backing that up. You know, he's making sure Paul is safe from the 40 men that want to kill him. Questions on that? Again, we get a little older, Jillian, but I would recommend Captain Phillips, the movie. It's a great film with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is a good actor. I think his best acting is in that movie. It's a good movie, right? Yes. Yeah. And so I think it makes a good visual of like the power of America comes for one person. It's in the same way we see this, the Roman Empire for Paul comes all at once. Good. All right. Real quick, so Claudius, we finally learned the name of the tribune. Claudius, he sends a letter to the governor Felix. We actually know a little bit about Felix. He was the brother of a secretary under Emperor Claudius. Okay, so his brother worked with the Roman Empire, which is basically king of the world at this point. And so Felix, the brother, with a little nepotism going on here. Hey, I have a brother. Can we give him a gig in like the Roman government? And so Felix was made the Roman governor of Judea. Okay, so as Roman governor, his job would be kind of like justice, right? There's legal cases, and his home base was set up in Caesarea. By the way, because we know about Felix, we actually know how long after Jesus' ascension this happened. So Felix ruled from 52 to 60 AD. So when this is happening, it's about 30 years now after Jesus ascended into heaven. So we talked about John, a couple months ago? So now we are 30 years removed from those events. 30 years is a long time. What do you think has happened to Christianity at this point? It's everywhere. It's all over the place. It's not really a mystery anymore. People know about Christianity. Not just Christians, not just the Jews, but across the world. The Romans are starting to learn about Christianity as well. Okay. Any other questions on this section? Paul is brought to Herod's Praetorium, which is kind of like, he's almost in a palace. Not quite a palace, but he's upgraded from prison cell to more of a comfy imprisonment. He's still under trial, but he's not kind of abused like he has been in the past. Chapter 24, verse 1. And after 5 days, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and a spokesman, one named Tertullus. They laid before the governor their case against Paul. And when he had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, "Since through you we enjoy much peace, and since by your foresight, most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation in every way and everywhere, we accept this with all gratitude. But to detain you no further, I beg you, in your kindness, to hear us briefly. For we have found this man a plague, one who stirs up riots among all the Jews throughout the world and is a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to find out from him about everything of which we accuse him." Little brown nosing. A little sucking up. By the way, we know a little bit more about Felix. Felix was not a godly governor. He was pretty corrupt. And he would always, he would take bribes, and that caused a lot of conflicts and turmoil. It was recorded that Felix's reign was not a peaceful one. What do the Jewish leaders say? "We thoroughly enjoy the peace that you have brought us, kind and most excellent Felix." Do we know anywhere else in Scripture where the Jewish teachers of the law suck up to the Roman governor to get what they want?
To Pontius Pilate.
Pontius Pilate! We have no king but Caesar, Pilate! So do what we want! Kill this guy! In the same way, Paul is truly a follower of Jesus, experiencing all the persecution and turmoil that Jesus did before him. Well, let's see how Paul responds. Verse 10. "And when the governor had nodded to him to speak, Paul replied, and I want you to listen carefully, okay? Listen, how does Paul defend himself? One thing you can catch, one thing. How does Paul defend himself? There's a couple things, but just if you can spot one, okay? Knowing that for many years you have been a judge over this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. You can verify that it is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem. And they did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the temple or in the synagogues or in the city. Neither can they prove to you what they now bring up against me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way, which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. So I always take pains to have a clear conscience towards God and man. Now after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and to present offerings. While I was doing this, they found me purified in the temple, without any crowd or tumult. But some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you to make an accusation, should they have something against me. Or else let these men themselves see what wrongdoing they found when I stood before the council. Other than this one thing that I cried out while standing among them, it is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you this day. Give me one thing that Paul uses as a defense. Jillian.
They did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring.
Okay. I wasn't making a ruckus like they are saying I did. I was chill. And think about what Luke writes, right? What is Paul doing in the temple? He's bringing a sacrifice. He's doing the purification ritual. Like he's giving alms for those who are doing Nazirite vows. He's not doing like what Jesus did in the temple, where he's like, whoosh, you know, he's not whipping, he's not overturning tables, right? He's just chilling there. Okay, that's one thing. Good job, Jillian. Something else.
He said keep him alone, there was no crowd with him.
Okay, there's no crowd with him, right? What else? Was Paul in Jerusalem for a long time? Was 12 days. I wasn't even there that long, right? I didn't have much time to do anything if I did anything. What else?
Well, he's saying that the people that were accusing him aren't even there.
Oh, that's a big one. My accusers, those Jews from Asia, haven't even come. So how do you even know what the accusation is supposed to be in the first place? That's a good one, right? And furthermore, one more, that last one. And they can't prove anything anyway. They've got no proof for anything they are saying. Because remember, this is a big deal for the Romans. Do they care about Jewish law at all? No. They don't care at all. They care, did this guy murder someone? Is this guy like causing like a riots and all that? If the answer is no, then what do we care if they like he's profaning the temple? The temple's a building to the Roman Empire. It's nothing. And so this is what Paul is saying. I didn't cause any riots. I was just chilling. He also mentions, by the way, the Jews and I, we still believe in the same God. Although one difference. What does he say? Go to verse. Go to verse 14. What does he say?
That he worships the God of our fathers, believing everything.
Yes, before that though.
But I confess to you.
Jillian.
According to the way which they call a sect.
What is the way?
Jesus.
Before Christianity was called Christianity, what was it called? The way. Why is it called the way? Because Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. The way is Christianity. Paul is saying he is a Christian here. And by the way, do the Jews know about the way at this point? They do. How long has the way been around at this point? Like 30 years. So the Jews at this point have said it's just a random sect that, it's a division from Judaism. Now, Christians will say Christianity is not a division of Judaism. It is the fulfillment of Judaism, right? We are Judaism from the highest degree. That's what even Paul argues, right? That we are the true people of God, not by blood, but by the grace of our Lord Jesus, right? So Paul makes that argument that, he's a Christian from the way, but still acknowledges this. Do we believe the Jewish prophets?
Yes.
Yes, we do. The Jews believe the Jewish prophets, at least most of them also do. Paul's making this argument that what would they possibly even be mad at me about? We believe a lot of the same things. Kind of not highlighting the biggest one. Well, he does actually mention it. The one thing that they could be mad at me is what? What's the last thing he says? That he mentioned the resurrection of the dead. It's the one thing that they could have against me. Okay, questions on that? All right, verse 22. But Felix, having a rather accurate knowledge of the way, put them off, saying, when Lysias, the tribune, comes down, I will decide your case. Then he gave orders to the centurion that he should be kept in custody, but have some liberty, that none of his friends should be prevented from attending to his needs. After some days, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish, and he sent for Paul and heard him speak about faith in Christ Jesus. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the coming judgment, Felix was alarmed and said, go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you. At the same time, he had hoped that money would be given him by Paul. So he sent for him often and conversed with him. When 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcellus Festus. In desiring to do the Jews a favor, Felix left Paul in prison. So, Felix hears them out, and what does he end up doing? He stalls. Why does he stall? He's hoping for a bribe. It's kind of cool. We have history to back this up too, right? That Felix, from even non-Christian Roman historians talked about Felix, how he did not rule fairly at all. He's hoping that Paul's going to give him a little something, a little money, or maybe one of his supporters is going to give him a large sum. So instead of being actively interested in what Paul really has to say, he brings him almost as like, come on, tell me more. Do you really want to get out of here, Paul? Come on, really? Like, I can help you out. Just you help me out, I'll help you out. But Paul's not taking an opportunity for bribes or politics. What is he actually doing when he sees Felix?
He's conversing with him.
About what?
About the way.
About the way. He's talking about Jesus. This is an important lesson for us, right? Paul's life kind of sucks right now. I want to tell you, one of my biggest kind of irrational fears out there is being in prison. And just kind of like, the thing about being in prison is just, you just rot away, right? Your life is just being wasted doing nothing, accomplishing nothing, right? Paul has basically been in imprisonment for months and months and months, and yet is he just kind of sitting on a bench complaining to God, God, why you let this happen to me? What is Paul doing? He's doing what God had called him to. He makes that an opportunity for the gospel. Even sometimes when bad things happen in our lives, God is making that an opportunity for us to grow not only in ourselves, but to preach the gospel to other people. This happens all the time. That God can make good out of evil. God can make good out of corrupt politicians, believe it or not, advancing the gospel, maybe to even his wife, as Luke mentions. But we see Felix, not being a just judge, gives the Jews a favor, leaving Paul in prison for how long? 2 years of his life. chapter 25. We'll do a couple more verses tonight. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, so new guy's in charge now. 3 days later, he went up to Jerusalem and from Caesarea, and the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul. It's been 2 years. Have the Jews forgotten about Paul? No, they're still cheesed off. They're still really angry. You can see the hatred they had in their hearts, this grudge towards Paul. So that's a good question. That's a great question, right? We don't really have an answer for that. It's just a great question, Shane. How committed were they to their oath? Because he didn't die. Now maybe they said, well, he's probably dead, and they ate, right? But again, if we know anything about these mistaken Jews, they are not the most righteous and people in the world, right? So do I think all 4 of them starved to death? Probably not. But it's a great question, right? We don't actually know. I mean, multiple times Luke mentions they took an oath to eat nothing or drink anything until Paul was dead, and then we know Paul didn't die. So, great question. Verse 3. Asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. That was plan A. Doing it again. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So, said he, let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there is anything wrong about the man, let him bring charges against him. By the way, one tiny little detail here. Caesarea is north of Jerusalem. But every time we hear about people going to Caesarea, they are going down to Caesarea. And people go up to Jerusalem, even when it's south. Why is that? It's a little fun fact for you. Because it would seem like they would be going up to Caesarea because that's north. What else can be used for up or down?
It's higher level.
Higher level. Do you know anything about Jerusalem? Is Jerusalem on flat ground? Mount Zion, it's on a hill. Jerusalem is elevated on a hill. So you go up to Jerusalem, and then when you leave Jerusalem, you go down. So every time in the Bible we hear about people like going up to Jerusalem or down, even when we're not talking about north-south here, we're talking about elevation here. Just a small detail I wanted you to know, right? So going back to verse... Let's go back to verse 1. We can read it again. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. Well, Caesarea is north of Jerusalem, but he's actually going up elevation-wise, up the hill. And the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid their case against Paul, and they urged him, asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem, because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. Festus replied that he was being kept at Caesarea, that he himself intended to go there shortly. So, said he, let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there is anything wrong about the men, let them bring charges against him. After he stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he went down to Caesarea. And the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. When he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. Paul argued in his defense, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me? But Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. For if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, to Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go.
That's his way to Rome.
It's his way to Rome. So we'll talk about this in a second, right? Okay. New governor comes around. The Jews are still angry. They go to Festus and say, we want to charge this guy. And so they say, okay, we'll go down to Caesarea there. They go down and they bring Paul before trial. Festus wants the Jews a favor. Hey, Paul, why don't you just get tried in Jerusalem? Why would that be a bad idea for Paul? They're going to kill him on the way, or they're going to kill him after they do a fake trial. Again, Jerusalem does not have a good track record of justice, as we know with the very Son of God they killed at Jerusalem. So what is Paul's response? Okay, first, I've done nothing wrong. I ought to be tried here in Caesarea in Rome, amongst the Roman governor. Because that's not happening, I appeal to Caesar. Now, we talked about rights for Roman citizens. One right that every Roman citizen had was if they felt that justice was not done, they could say, I want to be tried by the king of the world. Take me to Caesar, and he will try my case. And again, for Roman citizens, we talked about before, right? 200 soldiers were given to this guy to protect him. Do they say, yeah, we'll put you on a ship and we'll bring you all the way to Rome? They say, what does Festus say? To Caesar you have appealed, and to Caesar you shall go. So, think about if you know much about history, was the Roman Empire kind of like a civilized age? Yeah, I mean, they had a strong structure for rights and governance. I mean, the Roman Empire is incredible. The fact that it lasted as long as it did and was as widespread as it was, I mean, they lived and died by their rules and rights and regulations, and were able to accomplish a lot there. I think it's interesting, we kind of have something like this in our American government. You know how we have the lower court system, right? And so local courts, if there's a trial or an issue that needs to be decided for justice and no resolution can be made, what happens? It bubbles up to higher courts, state court, and then it goes all the way up to the highest court, which is called what? Supreme Court. Maybe modeled a little bit off of the Roman structure there. If no other court can decide, then the highest court will decide. And so Paul, I think he's taking his chances going to Caesar, because again, what is the actual accusation against him? What are they accusing him of?
Believing in the resurrection. Okay,
believing in the resurrection is one. He made the temple impure. Do you think Pharaoh gives a lick about the purity of a temple? Not at all. So Caesar, why do you even put this on my docket? Get out of here. You're free. He believes that he'll get justice in Rome. And by the way, as you mentioned, Frank, he's going to get a ship all the way to Rome. Is that a place he wants to be anyway? Why does he want to be in Rome? Talking about Jesus, and he's told to go there, and foretold, and what's special about Rome? He's Roman. But why Rome? What's special about Rome? It's the center of the world. You ever heard the expression, all roads lead to Rome? What that expression means is, when the Roman Empire was developed, the road system was developed too. I mentioned how the structure was so good. Kind of like a good indicator of a wealthy country. If you go to third world countries, you look at their roads, they're dirt or gravel. You go to wealthier countries, what are you going to see? What do you see in America? Every road's paved, right? All the roads are maintained. Well, the Roman Empire had a really good road system too. And it all met at the heart at Rome. And so Paul thinks if he goes to Rome, that's how we talked about when he was in Corinth, how the gospel spread on boats. Well, imagine in the heart of the Roman Empire how it would spread. And so Paul says he will appeal to Caesar because that is his Roman right. Again, we see God working through Gentiles, through the pagans, to spread the gospel. And God working through Paul. And I also, one more thing before we stop today. Is there a place for political wisdom or knowing your rights as a citizen, as a Christian? I think so, right? Is there a place for having, like Paul was only able to accomplish this because he knew his rights as a Roman citizen, because he knew he could appeal to Caesar. If he did not know he could appeal to Caesar, what would happen to him probably? He'd go to Jerusalem, and then what would happen? If he made it to Jerusalem, and then he would get killed. But because he knew what his rights were, because he knew how the Roman Empire worked, he was able to take this opportunity to go to Rome. In the same way as Christians now, we should know our rights. We should know who our political leaders are. We should know what the sentiment in our communities are towards the gospel and the biggest problems in our country or in our local area. I think it's important. I think it's important to have. Everyone wants to a lot of people want to avoid politics or avoid talking about politics, all that kind of stuff, right? But I think even in the Christian life there can be a place for it, because does politics affect our neighbor? Yes, it does. Do we want what's best for our neighbor? Jesus tells us to love our neighbor. One last thing, right? Again, I don't want to get into specific into politics, but you really can only truly help people in the way our structure is by being involved in that kind of stuff. If you take on the sideline, then someone else who may not be as well-mannered as you or faithful as you will take the reins and make decisions and lead things. So again, I think there's a place for Christians to be involved and even in government and our communities that way. So anyway, that's my little side tangent. Paul gives us the illustration, right? Another question's all been can Christians be in the military? Yeah. A lot of the Roman soldiers were Christian, right? Can Christians be involved in the government using to keep peace? Can Christians be police officers, even if they have to shoot someone one day to protect people? Yeah, I mean, that's God using the government for our good, for the good of our neighbors. I think that's important to recognize as well. Sorry. All right. We're going to stop there. Any final questions or comments? All right, the last parts of Acts. How does Paul get to Rome? Because no pun intended, and you'll get in a few weeks. It's not smooth sailing to get to Rome. So let's pray. Dear God, Father in heaven, I thank you that we could gather this evening and learn about how you protected Paul, using the government of all things, which we know can be so corrupt and filled with evil, and yet you can use evil for good. You can use all things for good. Even when we think it cannot be reconciled or redeemed, you can do all things. Just as you have in our evil hearts made us right by our baptism, our sins are washed away, you have made us new, and you can make all things new. I pray that you would make the people around us new, the people with hatred in their hearts, the people that have gone astray, the people that we care about that need to know about you. Fill them with your Spirit. Protect them and keep them safe and redeem them. Make them whole again as you have first made us whole. Help us to do this, dear Father in heaven, when we have no clue what to do. Give us wisdom beyond ourselves by your Spirit. Protect us, Lord, in the days ahead. Keep us safe as we go about the world and continue to live and speak the grace and love of Jesus. Protect us tonight. Keep us safe this week until we see each other again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Another great Bible study. No Bible study. I'll pick it up the week after, okay?